Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
All right, let's bring in the outstanding Chris Mack. My friend, it's great to have you back on the show today. I've talked about the Pirate season, and I've equated it to watching the opening scene in The Fugitive, where the bus is on the train tracks.
Yeah, but see, this analogy follows then, Steve. It follows. Stay with me. Because somehow Brian Hayes is going to sneak his way out of the bus before the train hits, and he's going to survive, at least financially. About a half hour ago, they announced the Pirates haven't officially announced yet, but it's come out that he'll be getting an 8-year extension worth about $70 million and an option for the 9th year. So,
wow,
if nothing else, on opening day, they've got a little bit of positivity to look towards. Everybody's been so frustrated this spring with the way they've treated Brian Reynolds, with the demotion of O'Neal Cruz, and a year ago 2 years ago we were talking about Brian Hayes and were they going to get some sort of extension worked out, and it was a fairly low ball offer. Well, this is a little bit closer to something that a guy whose first few free agency years you're going to buy out. This is worth his while. Mm-hmm. For what it's worth. It's the largest contract in Pirates history. Which, okay, that's a low bar to clear. I get that, but if nothing else, it's them committing to a young piece that they foresee should be a part of the club the next time they're competitive.
Does Brian Reynolds want a long-term deal? Or at least a longer. How about longer? He's 27?
Yeah, I think previous to this spring, Brian Reynolds was very open and amenable to the idea of an extension with the Pirates. I think after going back and forth over arbitration this year, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he is a bit jaded, and just, I don't want to say waiting for the next shoe to drop, which will be a trade at some point, probably later this summer or next off season. But I don't know if he would necessarily mourn the idea of being a former Pittsburgh Pirate, given that, and we've seen this happen how many times now. They did it to Garrett Cole when he was coming up. This sort of going back and forth, this negotiation over what are, for professional baseball franchises, nominal amounts of money. In this case, about $600,000 they were going back and forth over in arbitrations, which, it makes no sense for the guy who's the best player on your roster. So if they came to him with a financially viable deal for a guy who is an all-star, and really the only drop we've seen in his performance was the little 60-game mini season a couple years ago. Yeah. If they came to him with a deal that reflects his performance to this point, he'd probably still sign it. But I don't know if he's necessarily as enthused by the idea as he would have been even just a few short months ago.
All right. Okay, so we talked about Hayes and Reynolds. I want to ask you about Mitch Keller. Because he not only did he pitch well in spring training, he was breaking bats occasionally in spring training. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get the opening day start, though. It goes to Brubaker. Now, does that matter? No, it doesn't really matter. I just thought that was interesting. What did you think?
Yeah, I think we've gotten used over the last couple of years to Derek Shelton being more of a new age kind of manager in that, he's going to use an opener occasionally. He's going to bring his closer in the 8th or maybe even the 7th if it's a high leverage situation in the middle of the opposing order. He's not beholden to some of the same traditions that we just have grown up with and think are intrinsic to the game, including, this guy has to be my opening day starter, or even necessarily being the opening day starter means, and fill in the blank from there, whatever your read on it would be. I also think that a large part of it is, JT Brubaker probably is the best pitcher in the best starter in their rotation right now, or has the chance to be. And they're giving Quintana the respect of, hey, you're the wily veteran who we're trying to bring on as a reclamation project. You can have the home opener.
Right.
And for Mitch Keller, it's added motivation of, I've been here for how long now, trying to find my way, and I still haven't found it. Even though I had a great spring, they're still going to treat me like any other middle of the rotation guy. And I think that, to be quite honest, is probably the kind of kick in the pants that Mitch Keller needs to ensure that whatever he did this offseason and brought down to Florida with him stays with him as they go to St. Louis and come back to Pittsburgh and embark on the regular season. Because that kind of bulldog mentality that really we have yet to see with him. I mean, he has folded like a cheap suit when he's faced the slightest bit of adversity through the first couple of years of his career. They need to instill that belief in him that he can bulldog his way through situations. And certainly this spring, it looks like he's got the stuff to do it. Yeah. Now he's got to layer the mentality on top of it.
Yes. Although it's interesting you talk about Derek Shelton being a new wave manager. I'm being honest with you. I have no idea what kind of manager he is.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point too.
Because to be honest with you, I mean, he's managed like how many years, Chris? He hasn't managed a meaningful game yet. Yeah,
I mean, he's 200, a little more than 200 games into his managerial career, and you're right. What do we have to go on, really? Because to your point, what meaningful baseball has he been able to? And
Chris, my comment's not a critical one of him. It's not. It's just it's just an analytical comment about, okay, fine, you're doing all sorts of stuff, but what does it mean?
Right, and I think, look, it wouldn't matter who it is in that situation. Exactly. We'd be saying the same thing. Yeah. Now the question will be, does he adhere to some of those, if you want to call them new age, if you want to, whatever term you want to use when you think of the younger style of managers, your Kevin Cashes of the world.
Yeah.
Will he adhere to that stuff and adhere to it strictly? Because my belief is you can be new school or old school, whatever it's going to be, and wherever you land on the spectrum, you better adhere to that set of principles time in and time out, because what we got a lot of towards the end of the Clint Hurdle era was the infusion of a more new age analytical way to think the game from the front office and above. And you had Hurdle, who was an old school guy and just wanted to do what he was used to doing. And a lot of times you get something different from game to game, if not series to series, sometimes within a game. Right. And so you've got to stay on course as far as this is what's going to drive my decisions, and I'm going to stay steady and firm in that.
With some teams, the front office plays a role in lineups and so forth, as you and I both know. Does Ben Cherington stay out of that? Does he let Shelton do that, or does the front office, not maybe specifically him, have some input as to what they're doing?
I don't know if Ben Cherington is necessarily involved with it on a daily basis. They've got a pretty good staff that Ben has brought in and developed that I think is, and I say pretty good in so much as they embrace that kind of thinking. And I think Derek Shelton embraces it as well. I mentioned Kevin Cash. He comes from that Rays style of managing. Right. And I think he probably is used to seeing that in action and frankly, seeing it work some places, right? Especially Tampa. So he's used to seeing guys from the front office provide data and analytics and logical reasons for, hey, this is why we should try this or do this that way if this is the result that you want. And I think it is. It's a whole lot more they're working on it together a whole lot more than they ever have before, managers and front offices on lineups. And I think Shelton still does have a lot to do with that.
Okay. Right, so now let's get to the city itself. We know the city's wrapped up in the Steelers. We know the city is wrapped up in what the Penguins are trying to do. I mean, a couple big games they had with Colorado this past week. Is there any buzz about the Pirates in the city right now, other than, obviously the fans haven't been happy about the contracts, but has there been any buzz?
No, I'd love to say there has been, but they're just, we're at that dangerous tipping point, Steve, where, I've said this to you before, and it remains true. You'd much rather have your fans angry at you as an owner and as an organization than completely apathetic.
Yep.
You were so right. And there are so many fans in Pittsburgh who are just apathetic towards the Pirates. There are fans that in some cases were fans for years growing up, going to games at Three Rivers and Bonds and Bonilla, and some as far back as, Stargell and the We Are Family Pirates of the 70s. And they have checked out. And it's a shame because this town loves a winner. And we saw that in 2013 through 2015.
Yes.
The city fully embraced the Pirates. But there, you can only burn people so often before they decide to stay away from the heat this time. And there's not even any heat. The gas has been shut off. So I don't, look, the Hayes extension will be a little tiny boost today here on opening day.
Yep.
And when they hold a press conference next week, when they're back in town to sort of officially announce it all, that'll be a nice little bump. But it's got to come with further moves. It's got to come with O'Neill Cruz being recalled from Indianapolis, say in April or May, rather than doing the wholly expected typical service time thing and leaving him down there until the middle of June.
I've got two issues though, Chris. Here are the two issues that I think have got to be brought up. Number one, Chris Bryant signed a free agent contract not with the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers, or the Angels, but with the Colorado Rockies.
Right.
Okay. Carlos Correa signed a free agent contract not with the Dodgers, the Mets, the Yankees, or the Angels, but with the Minnesota Twins. Right. Rodriguez starts the season with the Mariners. Bobby Witt Jr. starts the season with the Royals. Spencer Torkelson starts the season with Detroit. The Pirates do none of that.
No.
Right? And those are all small markets I talked about. They're all small markets.
And they're all indisputable facts, and they are all the kind of things that make you wonder as a fan if, there's a great quote I saw tweeted out from 6-7 years ago now, when Xander Bogaerts first came up with the Sox.
Yeah.
And it's Ben Cherington saying there's no such thing as a prospect in AAA. You can either help the big club or you can't.
Right.
And yet here we are this many years later, and Ben Cherington is telling us, well, we think O'Neill has some more development to come in the minors because we want him to learn a corner outfield spot and clean some things up at short. But in reality, we all know that he can help the Major League Ball club right now. At least his bat can.
Yeah.
A
bat, by the way, that includes now a DH.
Exactly. And so that's the thing that makes you wonder as a fan, okay, does Ben Cherington really believe what he's saying, or is Ben Cherington massaging what he's saying
or is Ben Cherington he's trying to keep his job?
Exactly. So, those are the kind of things you bring them all up. They're all facts. They're indisputable. Those are the kind of things that we're going to have to see change very quickly. And, in my mind, over the next year and a half, if you're going to really flip the switch from we're still the Pirates to, okay, we're at the very least going to have another window of contention, much like the window 10 years ago or the window 30 years ago now. If you're going to open up another one of those windows, the time's a-coming, and it's going to include O'Neill Cruz. It's going to include a free agent signing or two, or a deft trade for a veteran who nobody else believes in that you think you can bring back to relevance, like the A.J. Burnett and Francisco Liriano deals a decade ago. It's going to require that kind of stuff, and so you better be ready to pull the trigger when the time comes.
This is the Pirates averaged a little more than 10,000 last year per game. Now, I realized the first 2 months they had attendance restrictions. I always had to throw that caveat in, even though I'm sick of throwing the caveat in, because the other 4 months they attracted no one. If nothing changes in 5 years and they're still in that 10 to 15,000 range, and they're still circling a fogged-in airport personnel-wise like they are now.
Yeah.
This is what I fear for Pirate fans. They only have 5 more years, or I think 4 more years after that on the lease at PNC Park.
Yep.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that.
And you're headed right down the path. I have a friend who actually was a high school math teacher of mine, and he's a Penn State guy as well, and we talk about the Pirates a lot. And his contention is exactly the path that you're headed down, that if they remain mired in, forget just mediocrity, but if they remain mired in apathy, come 2030, I believe it is, when the lease is up on PNC Park,
yes. Yeah.
If they want to threaten some sort of move in order to gain leverage for major ballpark improvements or whatever it may be, then it's going to be met with a collective yawn from Pittsburgh sports fans.
Yeah.
Nobody in this city wants to go from being a 3-sport town to a 2-sport town. But if somebody who has provided us very little relevance as far as competitive baseball is going to hold our collective feet to the fire as fans, as taxpayers, as whatever it may be, to get something out of us, then I think a lot of people are going to say, thanks, but no thanks. We'll put a really nice AAA team in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And, because that's basically what you've been for the last 25 years anyway, right? 30 years. And people will not, that's a very, it sounds crazy at first. And I think Major League Baseball would probably step in and try to prevent it from happening because they know that Pittsburgh and the ballpark and everything that comes with the history of the organization, I don't think they would want to uproot that. But at the same time, it is a reality. Like you said, the lease runs out in 2030. And if they're still being met year after year, summer after summer with that collective sigh of apathy, then I don't know where that goes if the Pirates decide that they want to ask for something that fans and community members have no appetite for giving them.
Look, it's a consumer-based business.
Yeah,
right? You have to give your consumer something to be excited about. Right? So, oh well. Hey, thanks so much, Chris. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. Hope everything's going well for you down there.
Oh, it's great, and I hope everything's well up there for you, Steve, for you and yours. And I always appreciate the time, my friend. Love catching up with you.
Same here. Thanks, Chris.
All right, Steve.